Greetings, my name is Slight, and I've got a really cool video for you today. What we are looking at is something I've hinted at in a couple of my other videos. It is a Gunfire Reborn challenge generator that I have built, and I plan to keep up with it, or at least pass it on to the community, to someone who can remotely keep up with it as time moves forward. So worst case scenario, if I end up not wanting to work on this anymore, I'll have somebody who can. Now I'm going to show you all of the facets of this. This was originally coded by someone else, and it was relatively simple, and I put about, I would say probably 30-40 hours into it. Let's see here. Oh, hold on, pause. Okay, I signed in, so you can actually see my revision history for this particular thing every time that I've checked in code. So I did put quite a bit of time into it. Okay, all right, so I have proven that I tried hard. Yes, that's good to know. All right, let's make this full screen and reload it. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through how to use this thing, what it's used for, and kind of explain some of the intricacies of it. This has stuff for solo play, for team play, for casual, for moderate, and for very difficult play. You could use this to do like very hard challenges that would be difficult, I think, for even like speedrunners. I could be wrong. They might trivialize it a little bit, but I think for the most part, most people would struggle a lot with these challenges. But the intention is to be balanced. The last change I made before making this video is I went through and I tried to balance the lower difficulties. I think they were a little too hard before, or not even a little too hard, but a little too restrictive, and that made them less fun. So let's get into it. So the idea here is you select a difficulty and a player count, and then you click Get Challenges. It's that easy, all right? But this does assume you're at high talent level, so there's certain like talents like etching that certain challenges will have information about. Use your own judgment and workarounds if you need. Honestly, if you're grinding through the game, you're on elite, this challenge generators may not be the best for you, but we do have the easy setting here, which is specifically made for people who don't even have reincarnation unlocked. Now, when I say easy, considering the fact that there's a lot of game knowledge that you may be lacking if you're in the elite nightmare area, compared to some of us who've played like 400 hours of the game, playing on easy is not easy. So don't count yourself out. If you're playing multiplayer, I'll try not to move too quickly here. There's some things you want to do before you click that button. All right. You want to assign each player a number 1 through X, where X is the number of players. So if you have 3 players, and in this example I have Chad, Bad, and Always Mad, and let me tell you, there's no better trio of dudes than Chad, Bad, and Always Mad. I mean, that just pretty much sums up any 3 given players who are going to play together, right? You would assign Chad to be player 1, Bad would be player 2, Always Mad would be player 3. Then you set the player count, the difficulty, and then you click Get Challenges, okay? And then each player gets assigned a role and challenges instead of you picking, all right? So this, to play in the spirit of the challenger, that's the challenge generator, that's what you would be doing. All right. Remember to play as a team. If playing multiplayer, you need to work together to beat these challenges. That means that one person's downside, other people might have to, sorry about that, hit my mic. Other people might actually have to work to make up for that deficit. And I highly recommend you do some thinking before you jump into a run. And we're going to go through some generated challenges and kind of think through how we would go about playing those challenges, right? And like what limitations are actually occurring. Because I think the thing that took the most time when making this was getting all of these. You can't really see very well. Sorry about that. Let's see something. Here, I'll do this temporary resizing here. The thing that took the longest was like these buckets for which mods exist in. So there's like a player bucket, weapons bucket, global bucket, and then each player, oh, and here's the wacky mods, and then each character, hero, has their own challenges that can run. And so another thing is that, like, well, it's really easy to create challenges that are mutually exclusive. Like, one thing tells you, don't use any weapons that do lightning damage, and another one tells you, like, you have to play a miasma build. It's like, okay, well, that's not fun. That's not a fun challenge because those things are mutually exclusive. They kind of cancel each other out. So I'm just hitting everything. Still getting used to my new room, my new desk. I've done a lot of work to do that, and without getting too technical here, what you can see, maybe here, let me find an easier one here. Okay, so this is a good one. See line 197? You'll see that there's one that says like use only rare purple or legendary orange scrolls, okay? And that's available to you if you are playing in and around the challenging difficulty. But this one says you cannot use any legendary scrolls. So because I put these in the same line and they're divided in this particular way with this little text thing here, they'll never happen at the same time. It's you pick one or the other, right? Whenever this particular line is rolled for the generator. Anyway, I didn't want to get too technical. Let's get back to what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so yeah, I've done a lot of work to make sure challenges don't generate in such a way that it makes it impossible. If you have any suggestion, please add them in the comments below. I haven't looked at the comments in a hot minute. Hold on, let me make sure there's nothing inappropriate. One sec. We don't have too much of value down there, but I did get some good feedback and some people calling each other names, which is always fun. It's an open comment section. It's entirely anonymous. Why not? Why not? All right. Special shout outs for challenge contributions testing to all these people. Altana, the Wiser Lemon, Orus, Walter X8, Tag Origins, Neophyte HSR, Bob the Mutant, Vegathron, Fiona Cat, VCR Scan. I didn't look at these before. Colarin Timage, ICB Peng1, Drain Your Damn Pool, and you know who you are. Goffy Ascetic. Goif Ascetic. That sounds better. That sounds closer at the very least. Okay. So, to recap, assign people players 1 through 3. All right. So, some clarifications. We'll go into these here in just a sec. I think now what I'm going to do is just jump in and kind of show you a generated run of each difficulty, whether that's solo or team. All right. So let's do an easy run with 3 players. Let's do 2 players to start. Get challenges. All right. So at the top, you'll see here a difficulty is normal, elite, or nightmare, and this little 1 right here. This 1 means, in general clarifications, if you don't have the generated difficulty unlocked, choose the highest difficulty you or your squad can play. So if you didn't have nightmare unlocked, then you would just choose to play elite or normal, right? Heroes are assigned. Player 1 is Lee, Fox, and player 2 is Tao, the rabbit. And then we have the actual challenges. On easy with multiplayer, each player is given 2 challenges. These challenges are specifically easier challenges that are not meant to be nearly as taxing mentally or as restrictive. So, player 1 has to skip every 3rd scroll that they're offered, and so they only get 66% of the scrolls that they normally would. And they can only pick up or buy the following weapons: Thunderstorm, Ghost Shock, Rainbow Arc, Rainbow, or Lightning Kasana. All right. Now, why does it say pick up or buy? That means that if it falls on the ground, if it's shared, if it's in any peddler of any kind, they can't get it unless it's these 5. So that might seem like kind of lame, but if we go down to 2, no matter what, you are always allowed to use the Foundry. Okay, no matter what. And remember when I told you that you want to play as a team, all right? You need to communicate with your team what you can play, all right? And they need to be on the lookout for that kind of stuff, all right? Based on Lee Fox, there are certain weapons of these 5 that are going to be better than others. And so it's important that you two communicate and try to get the right kind of weapon on player 1. Player 2's Tao. They can only make a max of 2 purchases at the Peddler and the Phantom Peddler, and they cannot use large blue ammo at all. And I would say that overall, this actual restriction of only 2 purchases at each Peddler or Phantom Peddler actually tends to be kind of restrictive. Sometimes you lose a scroll. Sometimes there's a weapon that you really want, but you can't get it. And so I would say that these are pretty balanced and very relatively restrictive. In team play, you always get global mods. All right. In solo play, you do not get any global mods. All right. And global mods are specific to team play and often have stuff that is specific that could only be done in a multiplayer setting. So each player can only be revived a total of 8 times. Okay. And that means each player. So there could be a total of, 16 or maybe technically, 16 revives between both players for this run to be successful. Any more than that, and you should end the run. You have lost the challenge. Self-revives do count, so you kind of get 1 self-revive, 7 team revives, but you're always allowed to use the peddler. And that's true of any challenge difficulty. I personally didn't think that it would be fun to restrict the peddler revives. That way, especially in multiplayer, nothing's less fun than being put in a position where you have to just watch. So waiting for that peddler can be quite the slog, but at least you can get back in the game. And so peddler revives are always acceptable. And now the other randomly generated challenge is no against the flow, skateboarder, or advanced depot for any player. And really what that means is it's going to be really hard to do any no reload synergies. Okay, and so that covers 2-player on the easy mode. Let's take a look at solo. For solo, you'll notice that instead of getting any global mods, you get more of the individual mods. All right, you have been rolled lay low, or man, someone told me how to pronounce it, and I have not put much effort into learning the correct pronunciations for the heroes. But lay low, there we go. I'm trying. It's the tiger. Mods cannot take any scrolls that give elemental damage or improve your elemental effect chance. So this is just scrolls, not ascensions. And so anything that would do elemental damage or elemental effect chance, you can't get. You can only shoot weapons that have an even numbered magazine. All right. And that's at the time that you would be shooting it. And it's the maximum magazine. So this means that you kind of have some like interaction here. You can, try to re-roll its inscriptions. If you get in like certain stuff, is more or less likely to be able to get to an even or odd numbered magazine based on the inscriptions that it has. So this is kind of a unique one because you're really not aware of how this affects you until you start playing. And you have to skip the starting weapon chest. So really nothing too bad here. Most of the game is accessible to you. You're just playing a little bit of a challenge on one of these difficulties here. But one thing we did... No, never mind. Oh, yes, shoot. Only shoot weapons that have an even numbered magazine. So that's important because number 3 here says, challenges say that you cannot shoot a weapon, meaning that you still can have it in your inventory as long as you don't shoot it. So you could have it as a Gemini. You could hold on to it while you go try to find something where you could like re-roll, all of the green inscriptions, and maybe one of the green inscriptions gives it magazine capacity, get rid of that, and then you can use the weapon, right? All right. I think that covers easy. Let's bump it up to moderate, and let's go 4 players. All right. So immediately you'll start to notice that there's a lot of text on the screen, okay? And that's because each player gets an additional personal modification, and there are 4 heroes here. So one of the things that's important to recognize when you're trying to do this challenge generator is it's probably a good idea to sort of like copy paste and send each person their challenge before you start the run, and then do like some kind of discussion about like, hey, what are we trying to do? Once you're in the moderate and challenging difficulty, the challenge is pretty high. Just keep in mind that this is balanced around Reincarnation 1, okay, which is arguably one of the easiest difficulty ratings in the game. Because you have access to the blessings, remember that you need to kind of exploit what's available to you. Moderate's a great place to kind of like climb the ranks. If you want to play moderate difficulty multiplayer runs, you can play higher than Reincarnation 1. If we go down to 1 here, I'm not sure why this is different than it used to be, but this used to say 1+, which means that like you could kind of go as high as you wanted to, but Reincarnation 1 is the floor. I'm going to change that real quick. Okay, we're back. I actually fixed it. Okay, there was actually a logical bug in the way that it was doing this. Okay, so now if we look at Reincarnation 1, we can go down here to 1 that says this is the difficulty floor. Feel free to go higher. So you can do a couple runs on moderate, crank up the difficulty, you know, maybe even up to R8 if that's what you and your squad normally plays on anyway. And it'll probably be a pretty good time without it being like too challenging and without having to like brain burn yourselves. So, you know, as a reminder, it may be useful for you to send each person their specific text of their challenge. That way they have it, because it may be useful to reference it as you go, especially as we get into harder difficulties. There's a lot of restrictions that occur, and some of them are easy to remember, but not all of them, right? So let's go through this challenge here and see what we're looking at. All right, difficulty, Reincarnation 1+. Heroes. We've got player 1 is Lee. They may only take Cataclysm as their starting blessing, and we have a 7 here, all right? 7 says, you can re-roll the starting blessing until you get it or skip the blessing. You are 100% allowed to reset to try to get the blessing, but this gets complicated in multiplayer, right? We don't want to, you know, just like keep having to restart because someone's in a bad spot, right? So in general, I don't like to reset more than once for multiplayer just because we want to get to the fun, right? You know, and if you have to skip it, you have to skip it. So this is most of the time you get, you know, a fair amount of the time you get Cataclysm. Sometimes you don't get a starting blessing. So that's kind of what it is. This says cannot take any scrolls that improve the damage of Blazing Meteor. So you can still take Ascensions, no problem. But any scroll that would give you skill damage or improve your secondary skill, you cannot take. All right. This person has been assigned a role. Now, roles are really cool, and they're unique to multiplayer. Roles have a higher chance of being rolled, and only one person can get each role on a team. Oftentimes, roles come with a drawback, and they give you something that you normally couldn't get otherwise. You also cannot use normal green ammo. All right, so now that I've read that, let's go down to 4. I've been assigned a role, Medic. Roles. These change based on difficulty and number of players. Medic. Cannot use the Craftsman or have teammates use Craftsman for you. All right, so you can't do any etching or re-rolling or upgrading any weapons. All right, so you're always using kind of basic weapons. Okay, well, that's a huge downside, right? You can't use Cursed Chests either, which is sort of a way around it. But no other players are allowed to revive each other. They may only be revived by the medic, and all other revive restrictions are ignored for all players. So, having a medic means you do not have to follow this particular global mod. It gives you an out. So now, each player could normally only be revived a total of 6 times, but one of your characters is getting reduced in power, but has the ability to revive everyone an infinite amount of times insofar that they are doing it. One thing to keep in mind, no players are allowed to revive each other, so you are allowed to revive yourself, right? So that's really cool. We've got a Lee Fox medic who's doing some like secondary skill build that will probably get a little weird. Player 2's Tao. They can only pick Ascensions from the Raging Bloom tree. So there's 3 trees of your Ascensions, and she's stuck to one of them. Can only make a max of 2 purchases at each Peddler or Phantom Peddler, and can only shoot weapons with an even numbered magazine. No problem. Qingyan, the bird, you know, it is. I'm just trying my best. Can't reroll their starting blessings, so you have to take the 3 that you're offered. You have to unbind your jump key in the settings, and you can rebind it if you get stuck somehow. So after testing this and seeing some feedback from other people playing it, this is not as bad as it sounds, especially on the bird where you can leap. Realistically, this does make you play in a particular way, but it's not too bad. It's actually kind of fun not being able to jump. It does mean that you can't get certain treasure vaults, though. Certain treasure vaults are actually impossible to get if you can't jump. But with the bird, you could technically get around them if you're willing to take the time. Only shoot weapons with the lightning damage type. All right, so that is a pretty restrictive setup, but nothing too bad. The turtle here, player 4. So we've got Lee, Tao, Bird, and the turtle. One thing to keep in mind is that you can only ever get 2 of the same hero on your team. I have included that in the code. So you'll never get like 3 of the same character. 2 is the maximum that you could ever get of the same character. And I thought that was probably the best way to do it. You know, 3 of the same character gets to be like if you get random that, you're really likely to just re-roll. It's not as fun, right? But 2 is fine. Turtle can only take hero-specific blessings and cannot reroll the starting blessing. This means that there is some chance you don't get a starting blessing, because if it's not hero-specific, you can't take it. You cannot pick any level 3 ascensions, but otherwise you're not restricted from your ascension choice. And you cannot shoot weapons with the normal green inscriptions. And ignore this restriction for the starting weapon chest. Okay, so this one's kind of annoying. This one means like anything that has like green text on it, you can't shoot. So you actually have to find and work with your team to find a weapon that doesn't have any green text on it so you can use it. One thing to keep in mind is you just can't shoot it, right? And you can always shoot your foundry. So you can pick something up you want to use and then find a cursed chest that will upgrade all the normals to rares, which is relatively common, and then you'll have a weapon you can use. Nothing too restrictive. Global mod. Each player can only be revived 6 times. This is actually canceled out because we have a medic. And no Against the Flow, Skateboarder, or Advanced Depot for any player. When we look at moderate for a solo player, you'll see that they get 4 individual mods and nothing else besides that. And once again, the mods that are chosen from this pool are scaled down to be moderate difficulty. As we go into higher difficulties, not only do we get more mods, but the mods get harder. So the tax on you to keep up with all of it gets more and more difficult. Let's go up to challenging. In challenging, we're given 5 mods in solo play. You cannot increase your total HP under any circumstance. Total HP is a key term in Gunfire Reborn, and it means the combined total of all HP, armor, and shield. All right. So that's what that does. You're playing Lee. The difficulty floor is Reincarnation 4 for challenging. You cannot take any levels of Heat Recovery, Endless Wildfires, or Furious Flame. Now, it might be hard for you to know which ones those are, but in general, that is the way that these cannot take any levels usually work is they kind of pick a specific one out of each of the trees, and they tend not to double up or triple up on the same tree. And they kind of take out options of playstyles. I've chosen these ones specifically to push you in a direction of how to play. Speaking of that, you must prioritize Burning Bullet, Heat Recovery, and Nourishing Fire above all other ascensions, even if otherwise restricted. So Heat Recovery was restricted here, but because we got this other generator, we're actually allowed to take it. And that's because we have to prioritize these 3 ascensions above anything else. And these prioritization ones actually push you into a particular way of playing. If you are sort of thinking about what you're doing. All right, after you shoot your first weapon, you must only shoot weapons from that weapon type the rest of the game. The foundry doesn't count. So basically you're kind of like, well, what am I going to play, right? And if I'm playing lay low, I need a sniper, all right? And once I find my sniper and shoot it, I can only use snipers for the rest of the game, all right? I can't use anything else. And it's only shooting, right? It doesn't mean I can't pick it up or buy. So I can have an Aura of Venom or a Tiger Cannon or an Angelic Aura in my secondary slot insofar as I never shoot it. You cannot shoot weapons with green inscriptions. Ignore this for the starting weapon chest. So this is a pretty tough one. Now keep in mind, this is balanced against Reincarnation 4, not Reincarnation 8, which is what I normally play on. This would be kind of terrifying to take into R8, but Reincarnation 4 is a lot more reasonable. Really, it's just kind of hard to keep track of everything. So once again, if we're playing multiplayer, highly recommend everyone gets a snip of what they're working on. Let's do a 3-player in challenging, and this is sort of the last one I'll go through slowly. Unforgiving and Essentially Impossible are the 2 higher difficulties, and man alive, are they difficult. They are made to be very, very hard. Only go into those lightly. I personally think that I'm more in like the challenging era, range of difficulty interest. Unforgiving starts to be a hard sell. You really need a good team of people to play against the Unforgiving challenges. So let's look at challenging. Reincarnation 4, this includes Spiritual Link and Mysterious Joe Cool. Notice, I'm going to spam this, how these are randomized. All right, these are not always the same. Okay, so you can get stuff with a Mysterious Joe Cool and without. This one does have Spiritual Link and Mysterious Joe Cool. Player 1 is Lee. The Fox cannot reroll Starting Blessing. They have been assigned the medic role, and they can only pick up or buy these particular weapon types, so they can't use anything else. Crown Prince, the cat, may only pick ascensions from the orb tree. Must always interact with cursed chests when spotted, and cannot shoot or use abilities until they've completed the chest. This is especially difficult in multiplayer, where enemies keep moving while you're interacting with a cursed chest, so you have to be tactical. If you see a cursed chest across the room, you're stuck until you can go over there and get it taken care of, right? Only shoot weapons with the fire damage type, which, you know, that doesn't sound too bad, does it? We've got a double cat run, which is pretty good. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Every time you throw a smoke grenade, you must throw 3 or until you're out. You have been assigned a role, glass cannon. So we'll come down here to glass cannon. You cannot take any defensive or utility ascensions or scrolls whatsoever, only damage. So you basically do have to purely play as a glass cannon. When you're deciding what offensive and defensive or utility means, use your best judgment as a group. You know, if you're not sure about something, but generally offensive scrolls increase your ability to do more damage. You know, if you're getting something that allows you to, it's like a rate of fire increase, you know, lowering your reload time, or, you know, making you not reload, those are offensive things because they actually improve your damage, right? Okay, so we've got a glass cannon who can only shoot the lightning damage type. So kind of an interesting medley of people here. Each player can only be revived a total of 4 times, but this is actually canceled out because of the medic. But otherwise, that would be the case. Only 4 times each, so a total of 12 revives. Players must collectively devise a strategy to avoid inflicting miasma for any reason the whole run. So this gets kind of tough. This is actually something I might want to work on as far as mutual exclusion goes. It's really hard to cover these when they're in 2 different buckets, though, because this is in the global mod bucket and this is in the player mod bucket. Honestly, if I were in this run and I got to this and I saw lightning damage type, but you can't inflict miasma, I'd probably re-roll it. But let's assume that this wasn't lightning here, and maybe I can try to fix this. It will be kind of tough, but I can try. What this means is that everyone needs to work together to be like, hey, basically we need to like lock down a particular damage type, whether that's corrosion or lightning, and not use it. That's the only way that you can guarantee that you won't inflict miasma, right? So if no one is using, like, we probably don't want to, like, you know, stop us from using like corrosion because we have 2 cats, so we need a way to like not use lightning under any circumstance, even scrolls. Basically, like, we should not see any miasma happening, and if we do, we need to stop and figure it out and get rid of it. It doesn't mean we lose the run. We need to just avoid inflicting it at all costs, and make sure we're playing around that. And no sharing scrolls or weapons, which is a tough global mod. Once we get into challenging, we start getting these types of mods where there's no sharing scrolls or weapons. And man, do they increase the difficulty. If you're playing easy or moderate, take advantage of sharing scrolls and weapons because it is incredibly useful. Incredibly useful. I do think that I might do some balancing around this, like maybe in the challenging difficulty, you could share like 1 scroll or weapon at each boss, something like that. That might be a little bit more fun. So I'll take a look at that. All right, before we're going to look at Unforgiving and Essentially Impossible last, let's look at the rest of what this challenge generator has to offer. We've got wacky, silly challenges. These are super fun, all right? Difficulty choice is yours. Hero choice is yours. As you can see, there's not a little bit as much placed in the formatting of these, but pick 1 or 2 of the mods below, all right? And these affect everyone who you're playing with. First one is loosely divide all active rooms into 4 squares, and everyone must stay in their corner. All right. In the settings, all players set their damage number size to large and damage number opacity to 100. 3. You must break all pots and barrels in a room before you can start killing any enemies. If you make a mistake, all players discard the scroll in the top left of their inventory. So you've got to go around and kill all the exploding barrels, all the pots, and then start killing people. Let me tell you, that is not easy to do. So I would say try it on a lower difficulty first, but it is really fun because you kind of have to hunt down everything in the whole room. And it's easy to miss stuff. Like there are certain rooms in the Angsty Desert that have so many pots. So, you know, just keep that. And bosses, the Wind God has so many pots, right? All right. And we'll run. I don't want to show you all of them, right? Because there's quite a few. All right. Someone must volunteer to carry. They get all the scrolls in the game, but they can't take any ascensions. All right. So everyone gives them all their scrolls, and then they can take ascensions. And then that person can't take ascensions and gets all the scrolls. And the guy it's pretty fun to sort of like build one person to be super powerful. But without ascensions, it's kind of like, well, what's the best way to do that, right? All players must invert their y-axis in settings, or uninvert it if you keep it inverted, you animal. That sounds horrible. I'd be playing on Nightmare, or maybe even Elite, and I think I'd still lose. And then the last one that you have an option for is you must make sure there are no cursed chests in the entire room before you start killing enemies. All players must complete the chest before they can start killing enemies. So similar to the pots, but with cursed chests this time. So there are quite a few more of those. I encourage you guys to have a fun time checking those out. They're really fun. There's no real difference between the player count here. Slight's Way, you may know. You've seen me make some videos about it. Basically, it's a step up from the maximum difficulty provided by the Gunfire devs, with an emphasis on supporting build variety and player adaptability. Instead of a generated challenge, this is a tailored challenge that I particularly appreciate. The main changes are you random a hero, skip the starting blessing, and you have Mysterious Jokul turned on, so you get your third blessing after you complete the third act. You cannot reforge Geminis, which really extends the it really makes it a lot harder to find the perfect weapon, and you have to like sort of pay attention to weapons a lot longer into the game. That being said, it is really hard to get out of the Longling Tomb with both of your revives, and if you can do that, you're in a pretty good spot in Slight's Way. No reload abuse, no miasma abuse, no spore abuse, meaning taking advantage of the most OP versions of these. And spread elemental effects to all enemies within 8 meters band. The fun stuff is multiplayer. In multiplayer, it will randomize the 3 players, your heroes. Same rules as above, but in addition, at the campsite after each boss, players may share 1 scroll or 1 weapon each, and no player may receive more than 1. So you're kind of like, you give 1, you get 1, all right? And so no one's getting stacked up. You're all trying to make the best of what you can do. And the team may only revive a total of 6 times. So it's 2 times the number of players. This includes self-revives and peddler revives, which is different than the normal challenge generator. So peddler revives do definitely count as one of the total 6 revives that you're given. And the goal here is to get through, the run with as few revives as possible, which is really, really tough and requires a lot of thoughtful decision making. So good luck if you try Slight's Way. I do think it's a pretty accessible step up from Reincarnation 8 Mysterious Jokul. It is very hard, but it is not impossible. And speaking of impossible, let's jump in to the hardest difficulties that my generator will generate, and we'll just take a look at a couple of them and see what they're like. Solo Unforgiving. And that's a lot of text. Okay. So one thing I'm considering for balance in these higher difficulty ones is like maybe less challenges, but just harder challenges, right? And we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. It is a lot of work to do that, but let's just take a look at what we got so far. Let's roll again. We're playing Tau. You can't use any legendary scrolls. You can only pick level 1 ascension. So you're kind of playing bingo, where you can only get the first level of each ascension. You can only shoot while you're casting swords out. Now, a lot of these challenges have been made so that they can be completed meaningfully. All right. So it's definitely possible to be casting swords out a lot of the time. All right. There are ways that you can do that. Certain scrolls really help you do that. And there's sort of things you can do while you're not casting swords out. oh gosh, the more that I think about this one, it is pretty. I'll look at this one. This one might need to get removed because, like, how are you going to charge your swords out if you can't shoot during it? It may not be too bad actually, because if you get like one level of more blades, and then you get one that increases the number of blades at the initially without you having to actually stack any blades, you could. I mean, you would be shooting most of the time, right? Anyway. You have to prioritize Warlike Blade, Ammo Extractor, and Empathy with the Sword Ascensions above all others, even if otherwise restricted. You cannot reforge Geminis of the Craftsman, and you can only pick up or buy weapons with a base damage more than your highest level weapon. Alright? So, every time you pick up a weapon, it has to have a little bit more base damage than what you currently have. And man, does that complicate things, because think about upgrades, right? So what happens if you upgrade something a couple times and it's like, well, now nothing is better than it, right? Or if you're playing Tau, so maybe an illusion drops, but the actual base damage of an illusion is pretty low per pellet, right? So it's pick up or buy. So you have to, and it's highest weapon level. So, you know, if you get this, be really, really careful. So this is Reincarnation 7 with Mysterious Joe Cool and Spiritual Link. This sounds like it would be really, really hard. It sounds possible though, but it sounds really hard. And as a last look here, let's do essentially impossible with 2 players. Notice that we don't get nearly as many ascensions on each player, but not ascensions, but challenges, but they are harder. So we've got Turtle and Monkey. No hero-specific blessings and cannot re-roll the starting blessing. Only pick up scrolls from elites and boss rewards. So you are heavily reduced in the amount of scrolls you can get. That is a very, very difficult challenge. After beating a boss, discard and recycle your weapons and pick up 2 new weapons from the boss rewards. One thing that I'm recognizing here is that only getting scrolls from elite and boss rewards, I should make it clear that the chest that you get is included in this elite. It's not just when the elite dies. I'll go in here and edit that. And you can only pick up or buy the following weapons. Okay, that seems pretty doable, right? I mean, it's hard, it's bad, especially this one. This one seems a little overly cranked. I'm pretty sure this is just only for this difficulty does this appear. Next player, cannot shoot your weapon unless it's buffed by Essence Chain. No problem, a little taxing to remember, which is why it's in these higher difficulties. Whenever you use Essence Chain, use it 3 times, which means that you're going to actually run out of Essence Chain pretty quickly, which these actually complicate the matter when used together. Cannot take any scrolls, blessings, or ascensions that give any move speed. This can be very limiting depending on what you're getting, especially blessings. Some of them give move speed that you wouldn't expect, and you can't take them. Cannot reforge Geminis at the Craftsman. All right, pretty tough. Now let's look at the global mods. Each player can only be revived a total of 2 times. Self-revive counts, but peddler revives are always acceptable, so you can kind of just like go through with peddler revives, but man, is that expensive, especially as it goes on. No sharing scrolls or weapons. Players must collectively avoid inflicting manipulation for any reason the whole run. You cannot enter any elite or treasure vaults. Oh, geez. Yeah, the more I think about it, this thing might need a little work. That seems a little too restrictive. And no spirit, feline, elemental weave, or elemental power for any player. Yeah, Reincarnation 8 with Mysterious Joe Cool. Little cool thing here, you'll notice that I programmatically, because we're on Reincarnation 8, there is no higher difficulty, so this general clarification doesn't say that it's the difficulty floor, because I coded it that way. Anyway, I think that covers everything that I'd like to show you about the Slights Challenge Generator version 1.12. I plan to kind of keep taking a look at this and updating it as we go. I have played a couple runs of it myself and had some success and some not success. But hopefully this is something fun. And if you do have any feedback on it, please include your feedback in the comments below. And I will try to implement that feedback into the challenge generator. Anyway, I will catch you later. See ya.